She believed, he lied. Live, laugh, love. World peace. I pledge allegiance to the human race. Welcome back, Mountaineers. I'm Mr. Movie Mountain, and today we're going to be talking about Francis Ford Coppola's white whale of a movie, Megalopolis. He has reportedly been trying to get some version of this movie made for 40 years now, and eventually said, you know what, I'm just going to do it on my own, and sold off a piece of his wine empire to self-finance this passion project. After, of course, getting turned away by all the major studios. So, how did it turn out? During the movie, my wife leaned over to me and said, "This is like Michael Scott's Threat Level Midnight."
Threat Level Midnight.
And I think this is actually a pretty astute comparison. Like Michael's clandestine screenplay, Megalopolis is something that was in a man's head for years and years, and he worked on and tinkered on his own in a way that seemed super cool, but then when translated onto the screen, general audiences might not pick up on the same amount of coolness, let's say. And each movie is filled with characters that you love. Jim, Pam, Oscar in The Office. And then for Megalopolis, you've got Adam Driver, Aubrey Plaza, Shia LaBeouf, just to name a few of the many stars in this movie. All these elements don't necessarily make a compelling story, though. And in the end, the product is a bit muddled and confusing. Similar to how Dwight in the movie at first is not a robot that gets edited out, but by the end, he actually is a robot. So many moments like that in this movie.
I play Samuel, Michael Scarn's robot butler.
All right, enough about The Office for now. Let's discuss what the plot actually is by starting with a synopsis from the movie review website Letterboxd. If you can't see a better future, build one. Genius artist Caesar Catalina seeks to lead the city of New Rome into a utopia, idealistic future, while his opposition mayor Franklin Cicero remains committed to a regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. Torn between them is socialite Julia Cicero, the mayor's daughter, whose love for Caesar has divided her loyalties, forcing her to discover what she truly believes humanity deserves. And while this is technically what the movie is about, it goes about telling the story in such a bizarre, experimental way to where I just thought incoherent is the word that describes this movie so many times throughout my viewing. And I can appreciate absurdity and zaniness in movies. I actually like that in certain instances. But this one just lost the plot too many times for my personal taste. It suffered from trying to say too much, but in a Tumblr quotes, blogging sort of way. Like, for example, there's this one scene where Caesar and Julia are up on this clock tower, which you don't know if it's real or not. I don't know. There was a lot of hyper-realistic surrealism stuff going on. But anyway, they're up on this clock tower having this conversation. Caesar's dream, his passion, is building this new utopia civilization out of this new element, megal something that he discovered. They're having this conversation about society, and Julia asks Caesar, well, what institutions would you bring into the new society? And he says flatly, marriage. And then the movie just moves on. Nothing, later it's kind of explored how much he loved his deceased wife, but I found myself about to do a forehead slap in the theater and bust out laughing at the same time. It just was so nonsensical to me. And along with the incoherence of the plot, the music of this movie was all over the place. And I understand it's supposed to be some futuristic, sci-fi, New Rome, but one minute you'd be listening to jazz, and then it would cut to some hip-hop beat. And I feel like the score and music for this movie didn't match what was going on about 60% of the time. I do have to admit, though, that Grace Vanderwaal's performance was actually pretty cool in the Coliseum. But then it's tied into this whole weird, she's the virgin of the city thing, and all these creepy people are donating to her virginity fund or something like that. I don't know. It was weird and out there. Since Morpheus is Caesar's right-hand man, my theory is that this movie really was just a part of the Matrix, and it was the evil AI overlords trying to fry our brains.
Morpheus, Dorpheus, Morpheus, go eat some walruses, orifices, porridges. Morpheus, Morpheus, go get to the buffet and walrus.
The movie is billed as a fable, and the thing with fables is you're supposed to learn a message at the end of the story. And I think the message that I got from this movie is, if an award-winning director has a passion project that they've been thinking about and working on for 40 years and no studio wants to finance it, maybe that's a sign. But before I get too negative, there are some good things to say about this movie. And so let's look at what reviewers on Letterboxd had to say. First up, we have Jake, who says, embarrassingly sincere, throwing everything at the screen, hard to watch, impossible to forget, blending high and low art, slapstick, Shakespeare, reality TV, hideous CGI. I want to see it again. And I'll admit, there is something kind of endearing about how all over the place this movie is, and a man just giving it all for his last big hurrah. Next, we have Karsten, who says, the first and probably last of its kind. There was a moment during this that was so ridiculous I basically blacked out for 10 minutes from disbelief. Was that even allowed? Something very Annette about this, which is a good thing. I will say I did want out of this multiple times and couldn't see the light. Probably the hardest movie anyone will ever commit to the bit, and for that reason alone, I gotta respect it. I'm underselling this thing. It's freaking ridiculous. Technically a Monkey Mondays movie. And I definitely blacked out several times throughout this movie. I would move so fast from one thing to another, it was hard not to get whiplash, and kind of puts you in a trance. And lastly, we'll look at this review from Irene. I think they were on acid when they made this. I've never felt so exhausted after watching a movie before ever in my life. And it definitely was a mentally taxing watch. I also felt tired when leaving my screening. Now, before I give my Movie Mountain rating, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, if you value this content and like my movie reviews, I have a goal of getting to 50 subscribers before the end of September. And with all that, I'll give Megalopolis a 2 out of 5 on the Mountain Meter. It was a 2-hour movie that felt like a 4-hour movie. It had some interesting visuals and concepts, but ultimately seemed like kind of a stinker. Maybe this is something that will get better over time as I think about it more, but as for now, I'm gonna kind of write it off. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.